Hello. I cannot hear you.
Welcome, I said. Welcome, Bruno. Buonasera.
Thank you.
Welcome to the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series. I'm so glad. I'll just introduce you to begin with, and then we'll begin our conversation. So, friends, welcome. Good evening, India, and buonasera. Buongiorno, Italia. In fact, I can say that. Buongiorno still. Isn't that right, Bruno? I can still say buongiorno.
Actually, technically, it's already buonasera.
Buonasera, okay. So
or maybe buon pomeriggio.
Yeah, exactly. Buon pomeriggio, Italia. Yes. All right. So we'll begin with that. We'll say buon pomeriggio, Italia. Sat Sri Akal, dosto, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Friends and Assalamu Alaikum. Namaskar. I'm in a conversation with Maestro Francesco Bruno, and this is the 149th Mēlā, or the episode of the YaarAnād Virtual Baithak Series, which is dedicated to the 550th birth anniversary of Gurū Nānak. Francesco is joining me live from Parma in Italy, where he is. He is an Italian exponent of the bandoneon and piano. He began learning piano at age 6, going on to perform concerts in Italy and abroad as a member of a children's choir. And he went on to receive classical training at the Giuseppe Tartini Music Conservatory. After earning a degree in physics with honors, and other scientists, Bruno joined the... well, it's just an accusation, don't worry, don't take me too seriously. Bruno then later on joined the Por Los Caminos Flamencos ensemble on keyboard in Palmas. He began studying Argentinian Tango, discovering the bandoneon in the world of milongas. Bruno completed a diploma in Tango and the bandoneon at the Codarts Conservatory in Rotterdam, where he had the opportunity to study under the Argentinian maestros, Hugo, Villena is outstanding, one of my favorites, and Gustavo, Beytelmann. Bruno toured globally in a variety of ensembles, including the Estopia Quintet, Gran Orquesta Tipica Otra. At the Café Tango Music Awards, Bruno served as a bandoneonist and jury member since 2011. He has served as bandoneonist of the Tango Spleen Orchestra. Bruno has conceptualized bandoneon, the breadth of 2 continents, released albums with the Tango Spleen Orchestra and Bernardo Lanzetti, and composed the soundtrack for Dancing with Maria. And now I'll just share the introduction in my mother tongue and my father tongue, which is Punjabi, of course. Not too far from Italy and Italia and Napoli. So Bruno.
May I just say one
Yes, go ahead. You can say
actually,
2 things.
I did not about the last thing you mentioned, this movie soundtrack. Actually, I was not the composer. I played in a few tracks.
You played on a few tracks. Oh, thank you for. I'll tell my team. It's a mess up in my office. Yeah, my dear colleagues who look at the texts. I will pass that on in Punjabi, of course. I'll update that. But that's beautiful. That's to be precise, semantic precision, the academic integrity, as I say.
Truthful, also for the real composer.
Absolutely. I mean, for example, I did not create the moon, by the way, just so you know.
Okay.
So, dosto, ji aaya nu, mere dosto, mere jani dushmano, daridyo pridyo, puto preto, ji sadke, badi khushi hai tusi naal jud rahe ho aj, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਵੱਧ ਹੋਵੇ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਘੱਟ ਹੋਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਜੁੜਨਾ ਹੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਹਾਜ਼ਰੀ ਭਰਨੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਥਮ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਆਦਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਦਾ 550 ਸਾਲਾ ਮਨਾਉਣਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਰੋਜ਼ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਵੈਸੇ ਵੀ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਸਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਬੜੀਆਂ ਸੁਗਾਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਅਤੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਇੱਕ ਬਹਾਨਾ ਹੈ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਅਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਯਾਦ ਦੇਣ ਦਾ ਇਹ 149ਵੀਂ ਬੈਠਕ ਹੈ, 149th ਬੈਠਕ। ਮਾਇਸਟਰੋ ਵੱਡੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਨੇ ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਅਤੇ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਦੇ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਮੁਹਾਰਤ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਨਾਮ ਨਾ ਖੱਟਿਆ। ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਜ਼ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਹੀ ਲਿਆ ਹੈ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਦੇਖੋਗੇ ਵੀ। ਔਰ ਫ੍ਰੈਂਚੈਸਕੋ ਬਰੂਨੀ ਇਹ ਪਾਰਮਾ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਰਹਿਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਨੇ, ਇਟਲੀ ਦੇ, ਔਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਇਹ ਨੁਮਾਇੰਦੇ ਹਨਗੇ। ਟੈਂਗੋ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਦਿਲਚਸਪੀ ਹੈ, ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਾਰਜ ਹੈਗਾ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਈ ਸਾਲ ਬਿਤਾਏ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਬਚਪਨ 6 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਪਿਆਨੋ ਤੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ। ਔਰ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੋਇਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਕੌਂਸਰਟਸ ਇਟਲੀ ਵੀ ਅਤੇ ਇਟਲੀ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫੋਰਨ ਕੰਟਰੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਰਫੋਰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ। ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਕਹਿ ਲਈਏ ਕਿ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਪਾਪੀ ਨੇ। I was just teasing you in Punjabi, Francesco, saying that the fact that you started at 6 and you were performing in the children's choir in Italy and abroad, that you are an old-time sinner. You're not new at sinning. So that was my little nudge, little joke at you in Punjabi. Purane papi means an old sinner. Pardon me for that. Actually, I don't apologize. I'm actually never apologetic. Trump only came yesterday. I am the non-apologetic phenomenon from before. ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਨਰਸ ਦੀ ਡਿਗਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਫਿਜ਼ਿਕਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀਤੀ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਹੀਏ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਇੰਸਦਾਨ ਲੱਭਿਆ ਹੀ। ਪਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਪੋਰਲੋਸ ਕੈਮਿਨੋਸ ਫਲਾਮੈਂਕੋਸ ensemble ਸੀਗਾ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟਾ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਕੀਬੋਰਡ ਅਤੇ ਪਾਲਮਾਸ ਵਜਾਉਣਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ। ਫਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅਰਜਨਟੀਨੀਅਨ ਟੈਂਗੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਚਰਚਾ ਵੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਉਹਦਾ ਉਦਗਮ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਹੋਇਆ, ਉਹਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਹੋਈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਕਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਫ੍ਰੈਂਚੈਸਕੋ ਬਰੂਨੋ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਵੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਜ਼ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟੈਂਗੋ, ਅਰਜਨਟੀਨ ਟੈਂਗੋ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਜ਼ ਵਜਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲੱਭ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ, ਜਾਂ ਉਹ ਸਾਜ਼ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਭ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਡਿਪਲੋਮਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਟੈਂਗੋ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅਤੇ ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਸਾਜ਼ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੋਡਾਰਟਸ ਕਨਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰੋਟਰਡਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਉੱਥੇ ਪੰਡਿਤ ਦਿਲੀਪ ਚੰਦਰ ਬੇਦੀ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ਿਸ਼ਯ ਹਨਗੇ, ਦੋ ਉਹ ਜੂਸੈਪ ਬੋਰ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਦੋਸਤ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨੀ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਦੋ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਸਨ, ਵਿਕਟਰ ਹਿਊਗੋ ਵਿਲੇਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਗੁਸਤਾਵੋ ਬੈਟਲਮਾਨ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਧੀਨ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਖਾਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਹੀਏ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਟੂਰ ਕੀਤਾ, ensembles ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਐਸਟੋਰਪੀਆ ਕੁਇੰਟਟ ਹੈਗਾ। ਕੁਇੰਟਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ 5 ਸਾਜ਼ਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਜਾਂ ਮੰਡਲੀ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ, ਸੰਗੀਤ ਮੰਡਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਅਤੇ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਟਿਪਿਕਾ ਓਤਰਾ। So Francesco, if I may, how many people are there? Like in the quintet, of course, there are 5, but in Gran Orquesta Tipica Otra, how many people made the ensemble, that orchestra? Approximately?
Okay, so it's approximately like 10.
Okay, about 10. Okay.
There is one piano.
Yeah.
One double bass, and then a line of bandoneons and a line of strings.
Okay.
So it's
at least 10 or more. Can be more. Can be
3 or 4 violin, maybe a viola, maybe a cello.
Okay. So I was just telling my fraternity, my Punjabi world about the difference between the quintet and the grand orchestra. So ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ 10 ਲੋਕ ਘੱਟੋ ਘੱਟ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ। 5 ਵਾਇਲਨ ਤੱਕ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਕਈ ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ 2 4 5 6 ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਮੰਡਲੀ ਦੀ ਰੂਪ ਰੇਖਾ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੈਫੇ ਟੈਂਗੋ ਮਿਊਜ਼ਿਕ ਅਵਾਰਡਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਬੰਡੋਨੀਅਨਿਸਟ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਜੂਰੀ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜੱਜ ਨੇ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਪਾਇਆ ਐਜ਼ ਸੇਵਾ ਨਿਭਾਈ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਜੱਜ ਤੇ 2011 ਤੋਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਟੈਂਗੋ ਸਪਲੀਨ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੰਡੋਨੀਅਨਿਸਟ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਨਿਭਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਜੋਂ ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਕਨਸੈਪਚੁਅਲਾਈਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਬੰਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਦ ਬ੍ਰੈਥ ਆਫ ਟੂ ਕੰਟੀਨੈਂਟਸ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਦੋ ਮਹਾਦੀਪਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਹ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਯੂਰਪ ਲੈ ਲਓ ਅਤੇ ਸਾਊਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਲੈ ਲਓ ਉਹਦਾ ਹੀ ਇਸ਼ਾਰਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ ਟੈਂਗੋ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਵੱਜਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਪੇਨ ਇਟਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਟਲੀ ਤੋਂ ਵਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਐਲਬਮਸ ਵੀ ਰਿਲੀਜ਼ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਅਤੇ ਟੈਂਗੋ ਸਪਲੀਨ ਆਰਕੈਸਟਰਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਤੇ ਬਰਨਾਰਡੋ ਲੰਜ਼ੈਤੀ ਨਾਲ ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੇਰੇ ਆਫਿਸ 'ਚ ਗਲਤ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਲਿਖ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਕੰਪੋਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਜਾਇਆ ਸੀ ਸਾਊਂਡ ਟਰੈਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਡਾਂਸਿੰਗ ਵਿਦ ਮਰੀਆ ਸੋ ਆਓ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰੀਏ ਫ੍ਰੈਂਚੈਸਕੋ Bruno de Nal. So Francesco, welcome to the 149th musical conversation come interview. It's sort of an interview but also a conversation where we learn about music, about instruments, about the masters, about different knowledge streams. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. And well, I can tell you a few things already Please. About what I played at the beginning.
Yes.
This piece of music, it's a tango, and it's called Che Bandoneon. Che Bandoneon means it's this Che. It's a way, it's an Argentinian way to address people, like hey you, hi. So already in the title, you see that the meaning of this song is to address to the bandoneon as it was a person.
A person. Okay.
Actually, the bandoneon is one of the main characters of tango culture, let's say. In the lyrics of this song, okay, I played just an instrumental version, but it also has lyrics, and the singer is telling to the bandoneon, why do you let me hear your voice that makes me think of all the sadness of my love and blah blah blah, no? So it's really a conversation with this bandoneon character. And it's a composition by Aníbal Troilo, who was one of the most important bandoneon players and composers and orchestra directors in the history of tango. And but this particular version is the arrangement of another great bandoneon player, which was called Leopoldo Federico. Died just a few years ago, and this is interesting because in tango music it works a little bit like jazz music. There are in the traditional tango repertoire there are a lot of standards, we can call them. There are tunes which are recognized just by the melody and maybe the harmonic structure. But then everybody plays its own arrangement.
I see.
So and usually the arrangement is more important than the composer, the arranger. For example, if I tell somebody that I played this piece, I would say it's Che Bandoneon by Leopoldo Federico, who is actually the arranger, not the composer, no? So in jazz, it's like you have the standards and then you improvise on that. So you go and listen, Miles Davis playing all the standards. There it's all improvisation and it's about the interpreter. In tango, it's all about the arrangements. So in the golden age of tango orchestras, which was, let's say, from the 1930s to 1960s. There were in Argentina a huge number of orchestras, maybe thousands of orchestras, and each orchestra has its own style, his own arrangements, so they were all playing more or less the same tunes, but in a very different way. So this is more or less how things work when you play traditional tango.
I see.
Yes.
That's fantastic. And tell me about to begin. I mean, the instrument itself. I've had the fortune of in India we've grown up listening to the accordion and a bit of bandoneon in the films. In the film industry, in the old classics, you have one of the top Indian actors of the mid 20th century. Raj Kapoor with the accordion singing the song, and so we were all versed with our introduction more or less. The masses is through the celluloid or through television when it came, and radio, of course. We've been used to that. But we were more used to the piano accordion. I had the fortune of being in conversation with Professor Giorgio della Role, our common friend. And then, so that was a good chance for us all to see the keyboard, the piano accordion. And then I was in conversation with Maestro Alexander Selivanov the other day, and we had a chance to see the button accordion from close. And in the next days, Alexander and his wonderful wife, and what an amazing artist she is, who plays the keyboard, the piano accordion. We'll be in conversation to see the two together, the two instruments in tandem together. Today, it's an opportunity for us all to see the bandoneon from close. So tell us about this, the history, and more or less how this instrument, where was it created, how was it developed? I saw some versions of the folk versions, which I think Alexander showed me from the Russian folk traditions. They were very small, wooden, and tell us about the advent of this instrument.
Yes. So, first of all, I can show you how it is made. So, the bandoneon is actually, in a way, similar to the accordion. No, it has a bellow.
Right.
One main difference from the accordion is that the accordion has a smaller bellow. It's higher, but you only open it a little bit, while the bandoneon you have a lot of air. Right. And the accordion is also something that you wear. Yes. You have straps, so you keep the weight of the instrument on your chest, on your back, and then your hands are used just to open the bellow and play the bandoneon. Is something which rests on your legs, like this, and it has keyboards. I will show you more close. It has buttons. You see, it's 38 buttons on the right hand.
Oh, I see, 38. Wow.
Yes, and 33 on the left.
I see. Well, 71 buttons in all. Wow, that's
71 buttons in all. And you can already see, maybe if you notice, that the two keyboards
are different.
Are different.
Yes.
So first of all, on the right hand, you have higher notes. So one button, one note.
I see.
Have no pre-digested chords. It's one button, one note. And so on the right hand, you have higher notes. It goes from here to here. It's almost 3 octaves. And on the left, you have lower notes, which goes from here, from low C, to here. That's a B. So it's another almost 3 octaves.
Wow.
And so you have 3 octaves here, 3 octaves here.
That's 6.
And 1 octave
in
is
between.
in common.
In common. So that's 5.
So you have a total of 5. But the thing is, it's almost like having 2 different instruments, because the sound is different. The right hand is more brilliant, is more trumpet-like, and the left hand is more, somebody can say almost like a cello in a way. And so one thing which makes it very special is that the note disposition in the keyboard are not in order.
Really?
No.
I see.
If you think of the piano, no, the piano keyboard.
Yes, that way. Yes.
It's very logical, no. In the bandoneon, at first look, it looks like it's random. So you have, for example, this is a C, D, and then you have a E, F, G, A. So any scale, you have a different pattern.
I see.
So there is no, you cannot guess where the notes are. And the keyboard here has a different arrangement than the keyboard here.
I see.
So it's 2 completely different keyboards.
Can you show the scales, just the scale from to the entire range of the notes? No, playing the notes.
Yes.
From
where
you are. From where you are.
Yes, I will show you here so you can see it better. Maybe.
Okay.
It's okay?
Yeah, sure.
So all the notes are.
Wow.
So,
they're going in a counterclockwise in a way.
Yes, I will come to that later.
Yeah, okay.
When I explain you
Right.
where the logic is.
Uh-huh.
And what I wanted to say. So in a way, if you think, it seems very complicated, but if you think about your computer keyboard, you don't have the letters
in the same order. Yes, exactly.
It's not A, B, C, etc. But the arrangement of the letters is such that it is practical.
I see.
So this arrangement comes from a practical reason.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so you have the 2 keyboards, and to make things more interesting, this is a bisonoric instrument.
I see.
Or as it used to be called, diatonic, improper way. But bisonoric means that each note, each button, makes one sound when you push and a different sound when you close.
I see.
So, or maybe it's the same. Or maybe
I see.
It's 2 completely different keyboards when you open and when you close. So you actually learn 4 keyboards.
I see.
And each of them has no apparent logic. And this comes from a historical reason. So I can come to a little bit to the history of the instrument.
Please.
So the bandoneon, even if it has become the instrument of Argentinian tango, it's an instrument which was originated in Germany.
Oh, I see. I see.
It's a German instrument which comes from the evolution of the German concertina, which was a much smaller instrument, more or less the same shape, but much smaller. And this happened around 1840, so around half of 19th century. And the original German concertina only had 3 rows, three rows button.
I see.
And then from there, people started to add more keyboards, more notes. I have here one. You see, this one, which is much smaller.
Yes.
Had fewer buttons. This actually instrument is from the beginning of 20th century, so it's 1 century and something. But this keyboard layout was the one which was the first evolution from concertina to bandoneon. So this was already a bandoneon. And the original logic of the keyboard is that for each row you have a chord. So and when you close,
I see. Wow.
And then another row on both sides. So without moving any finger, you can just play this.
Wow.
And this, and from here to the bandoneon, around, as I said, 1840, there were, in a few regions of Germany, people started to make this instrument more evolved, and they started to add buttons and to add. And this was in order to make a small and affordable instrument for people who wanted to play at home or maybe during the holidays.
It's like a small tape recorder which you can carry. No, it's a portable instrument which you can.
Instead of buying an harmonium,
picnic,
which was very expensive, you make this. And so there were a few places where some producers started to make this transition from the concertina to the bandoneon. And the one who was successful was called Heinrich Band. Heinrich Band was not a professional musician, but he was a trader. I mean, he was selling instruments. So he actually thought the way of expanding the instrument to make it possible to play a little bit more complicated music, a little more complete. And so the name bandoneon, it's actually comes from Heinrich Band. So it's the accordion of band.
Oh, I see.
Yes. There are actually on this period of creation of the bandoneon, there are many legends. And one legend is that he set up a company which was called Band Union. like
like a union. Okay.
Yes. So from bandoneon, then bandoneon. But this
My goodness.
is just a legend.
I see. It's a legend. I see.
There is no evidence at all.
Okay.
And also another legend is that that the bandoneon was created to play in churches, to play for religious events. But and this is probably been, it's a romantic story if you think an instrument built to play in churches then end up in Argentina to play tango, which is this passionate.
Yeah.
So
everything that the church doesn't want you to do.
Yes. So the story is very appealing, but it's also probably not true.
I see.
Because also the first methods that were selling together with the instruments were just providing, popular music and dances and things and so on. And the people playing this instrument were usually, at that time, people with very poor musical education. They would just need an instrument where they can put their finger somewhere and play simple things.
Right.
Actually, maybe on this other instrument it's easier to see. On the keyboard,
you can show it. You can be seated and show, because I've got a separate frame to show that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can close. I've got a close up for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You can be where you are. Yeah.
On the keyboard, you have labels. So here on the black wood, maybe it's difficult to see.
Yes.
But each button has its name. So you have button 1, button 2, button 3, then the button with a star, and then the button which is 1/2.
Can you just slide your chair forward where you are? Just move forward. Yeah.
Yes, like this.
Yeah, a little bit up now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Like this.
On this, yeah, we can see it closer. Yeah, perfect. I see.
If you look very closely, you see that the labels.
Right.
And the first music scores that were at the time, didn't have the notes, but you have just a line with these labels.
I see.
So people would learn the music just by knowing with the name of the buttons.
I see.
And
fantastic.
After that, so this instrument started to grow. From the small one has 88, let's say 44 buttons. This small one that I showed before. And then at some point, the second half of the 19th century, there was a very strong immigration from Europe to South America. Because in Europe it was there were a lot of poor people, and they were, there was the dream of finding, a better life in Buenos Aires. So there was a lot of immigration, and people, of course, would travel with their bag and their musical instruments. So at some point, somebody brought this instrument to Buenos Aires, and in that period, which means at the end of 19th century, that's where tango music was born.
I see.
So this instrument found a new voice, let's say, in that historical period in Buenos Aires, where a lot of immigrants from Germany, Italy, and all Europe came with their traditions, their instruments.
Place of convergence of the entire European regions were getting in one place. Yeah, fantastic. And the kind of a smelting pot it was,
Yeah, was really the real first example of, fusion, if you want. So that's how tango music was born, and the bandoneon became the instrument of tango in this process. So from that moment, there was started a huge production of instruments.
I see.
In Germany, which was they were all exported to Buenos Aires, Montevideo, and a huge number. I mean, the most famous producer was Alfred Arnold, who had his factory in Karlsfeld, I think, that's in East Germany, and he made thousands of instruments until more or less until the end of the Second World War.
I see.
More or less.
I see.
And then around in the 50s, let's say 1950s, tango music was less and less popular. Also because there was a military coup in Argentina, so all this social part of tango was forbidden.
Yeah.
And also when Soviet Union took control of East Germany, they took the factories to make more useful things.
Yes. Weapons, for example, yeah.
So the production, the big production of instruments actually stopped.
I see.
So we still are all looking for those instruments from the 1920s and 1930s.
I see.
See, actually, this instrument is from 1919.
The one you were playing?
This,
really? That's 101 years old. Wow.
Alfred Arnold from 1919. And that other one is a little bit younger, maybe 10 years younger, but still...
still a grandfather.
Still a grandfather.
I see.
Yeah.
That's
but
fantastic,
luckily there are now that, tango has become again very popular all over the world. Also the bandoneon is becoming more and more popular.
I see.
Also for other types of music, not only tango.
But to come back to if we go back to the origin, the German, the advent, the evolution that was happening in Germany. Do you remember something from some music from the time you showed how they were playing just minimal, very few buttons? Is there some repertoire that you've been able to trace? Some tunes that you have been able to find, like you've been finding old instruments? But are there notations written from the early music that was played on the early version of the bandoneon?
Actually, I don't have anything here with me.
I see.
And also it's...
But is there? But there is? That music still exists?
I think something exists.
Something does, okay.
But it's very... Also...
Of course, I mean, it was for ordinary people, so it would not be really in use for...
Especially when the tango started in Argentina, there people would just play by ear mostly.
I see.
So the first editions with the music written, it's the beginning of 20th century, not before.
I see.
Yeah.
So there's nothing from 19th century. It was just by ear. As anybody wanted to play.
Argentina, yes. I mean, as far as tango is concerned, I think it's 1898 the first published tango, and then for the as far as Germany is concerned, the popular music played at those times, probably that there is some old. But unfortunately, I don't have.
I see. And so what is the oldest that you can, if you can share with us the oldest music. Can we do a little timeline of who were the first composers when you studied? I mean, the ones who are now taught. I mean, as a pedagogy, who are the first or writers of composers who are taught?
Well, actually, as I said, it's difficult to make historical path looking at the composers.
Okay.
Because these compositions then were played and new versions were made. So it's easier to make a history with maybe interpreters or orchestras. But to make it a very schematic timeline, so let's say beginning of 20th century, tango was still very, played by simple people by ear, and there were no orchestras. There were just the instruments that the immigrants brought. So the guitar, the violin, the flute, also the harp, and then slowly, when this music became more popular and started to be played in maybe ballrooms or inside in some places, in pub places, then they introduced the piano and the double bass, and to make to go from an intimate setting to a like a concert setting. And that's why in the orchestra you have like 2, 3, 4 bandoneons and 2, 3, 4 violins, because at those times when there was no microphones, you just needed a lot of people to make a lot of noise. And the first breakthrough in tango music was the Carlos Gardel. Carlos Gardel was a singer, and he died very young in 1935, I think. But he was very, very famous worldwide, also in Europe. He also was in some movies. So that's how this tango music, which was, becoming something, also came to Europe and became very famous in France, for example. And then after that, the big period of the dance orchestras started in 1937 with the orchestras of Juan D'Arienzo, which started to play in a very, very rhythmical way. Like it would sound something like this. This was how the bandoneon used to be played in those times for the dancing. So it's mainly on one leg, because you use more the weight of the instrument to make accents. No. This is something you cannot do with the accordion.
Yeah.
Because you cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is the main function of the bandoneon in those orchestras. Then, of course, you can play the melodies, you can play many other things, but these rhythmical and almost percussive effects, because just with doing this, you hear all the noise of the bell, of the things. This is part of the sound of the instrument.
It's almost like that.
Yes. It's like the engine of the orchestra.
Yeah. Can you play something?
Yeah.
Do you remember some piece from that time?
Well, I can play you this one. I have a very bad memory, but I have one, which is more or less.
As long as you remember that we are in conversation, I'll forgive your lack of memory.
Now, of course, when you play in the orchestra, you switch roles. Sometimes
Right.
you do just chords, sometimes you play the melody. So it's very rare that you go alone with the bandoneon to make people dance.
I see.
Doesn't really work very well. I mean, you can maybe a few pieces, but then it becomes sort of boring.
Yeah.
You need all the elements of the orchestra to create contrasts and different atmospheres.
I see.
Anyway, this would sound a little bit like this. Something like that.
That was fantastic. Yeah, very, very interesting. Very interesting to see the use.
It's all about giving some energy to the people who want to dance. No.
Yeah.
So usually also from arranging and composing point of view, especially in the early orchestras, the pieces are quite simple. Then, of course, there are going on with the years. Then there were also orchestras which had much more complex, musical concepts and structure.
Right.
But then you have to be careful because then it becomes more and more difficult to dance. So you always, if you play for the dancers, you always have to keep in mind that you have to be somehow predictable to them. Otherwise they cannot follow you because the dance is completely improvised.
I see.
You have steps, have combinations, but you improvise when you dance. Unless you are a showman and you do a choreography, but that's another.
That's true. Yeah.
Another thing. And yeah.
And how is it when you look at the talking of the the keyboard, for example, the scales that you do when you're teaching, for example, or when you study, can you show us some of the scale exercises that you do with a little angle so that we can see your movement on the right hand and then also on the left hand, just to learn more about how the instrument works?
Well, actually, I have to be honest. I don't do a lot of scales.
I see.
No,
okay.
but I did study a lot of them in the past.
Right.
And And you can do, I mean, scale if you want. And then that's another other buttons.
Right.
It's the same scale, but other buttons. And you know,
And
you
the
have
left
different kind.
Yes.
The left hand is different. For example.
And
And
together,
this
when
just
you do
takes-
together, the scales together. Fantastic. Yeah.
you can you know spend your life
Yeah, of
playing
course.
all possible scales.
Ask me about spending life.
Yeah, because it's at the beginning you need some time, maybe some years,
Yeah.
to really get used to this.
Yes. So your experience at how you ended up at the Rotterdam, conservatory. How was it, and what was it to study this instrument formally? Were they teaching tango music, or specifically the instrument, or both together?
Okay, so for me, I mean, it all started when I began to dance tango music. I was going and I took a class for learning how to dance tango. And at that time, this was like some 20 years ago. And at that time, I was a scientist.
Yes,
I mean, yeah, I could play some piano for a hobby, but I was not a musician. I was a scientist. And but then one day I took this, tango lessons, and I liked it very much. And so let's say in a few years, since I liked this music so much, I really felt the need of starting to play really tango music. And but I was already 35, so I leaving everything to go and be a pianist was a bit risky, because but there are very few bandoneon players compared to pianists, but that was not the main reason. The main reason was that one day a friend of mine had a bandoneon. He was also a pianist and a bandoneon player, and he showed me his bandoneon, and so I tried.
I see.
And I tried, and in that moment I realized why the piano didn't work so well for me.
I see.
Because I realized that when I play piano, the piano is something which is there, away from me. But the bandoneon
is in your lap.
Is like dancing with me.
Yeah.
So it's a very physical instrument. You've seen, when I play, it's really
it's stitched to your body. Yeah.
Yes. And so that was a very strong feeling. And so I bought my first bandoneon, and I started to learn by myself. But in the back of my head, I knew that there was this school, this academy in Rotterdam, because a friend of mine had been there and studying flamenco. And so what happened one day is that I had this bandoneon and I started to play a little bit, but I was still, a scientist going to my lab every day. And then one day I had an injury playing soccer. I had an injury on my foot. So suddenly I was forced to be at home for 3 months. I couldn't walk. I had crutches and nothing to do. And that was, in a way, an experience similar to what are we experiencing now.
Yes.
It was actually a lockdown for me. So that was when, that moment, I really started to study. I had plenty of time, and then, okay, after 6 months, I was in Rotterdam already. So at that time, I decided I wanted to, I could not avoid doing that. So quit
you ended up there, you quit your work and went there. Okay.
And I went to Rotterdam. In Rotterdam, it's a very big conservatory.
Yeah, I know. There's a Indian music section as 𝘥𝘭𝘭𝘭𝘦 is there, and
Yes. There is classical music, jazz, pop, dance, everything you can think of. But there is this world music.
Professor Wim van der Meer and 𝘥𝘭𝘭𝘭 have started. They were both students of. I was mentioning that in Punjabi. They were both students of Pandit Dilip Chandra Vedi, and they've started the Indian music section, etc. So it's quite a school, quite an important school. Yeah.
Yes, there is this World Music Academy where you have the tango department, the Indian music, as you were saying, Turkish music, flamenco music, Latin music, all together in a way. So my education was about playing the bandoneon and tango music. So what was really fantastic was that, first of all, I had very good bandoneon teachers, Victor Villena, for example, an Argentinian living in France at the moment. And when you study there, you play a lot in all kind of tango ensembles. So there is the tango orchestra of the school. So from the very beginning, you start playing in a big tango orchestra, which is something which is unique in Europe, because there are very few. So and then you study also piano. You make when you do exams, actually you make a small concert and you prepare your arrangements. You organize the players and blah blah blah. So it was a fantastic experience, and I stayed there for 4 years, and I remember also all the people studying Indian music and Turkish music. And actually, for one pedagogy course, I was taking sitar.
Also.
It was like I should be teaching bandoneon to a person from the Indian department. He should be teaching me sitar and so on. So actually, you get to know all this kind of music world, which is really fantastic.
So anyway, jokes apart, you would be wondering, what am I doing with my phone while talking to you? Professor Claudio Brizzi sends a chow from his classroom, and I sent him. So this is what he sent, and I said, chow from from my conversation with you.
It's a strange world, yes. But actually,
He's teaching virtually the organ, and I'm in conversation virtually with you.
but actually, this pandemic thing has brought new opportunities also.
Yes,
To
it's changed the world
like this.
altogether. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I am someone who's lived a very private and a quiet life, working, working, working. The people were always thankless because they had no idea all the conservation work I was doing. Suddenly, with this, there's no other way but just to make the work that I've done of conversations and the oral histories projects, interviews and research into knowledge streams, into the having a close look at the lives of the masters and the traditions, the insights they have, and so on and so forth, understanding them. It's suddenly become public, so I'm doing it publicly. And so that was my little pardon, my apologies for my distraction, but me and him have been.
No problem.
So I took that photo because of that to send him. I said, okay, you're live there, I am also live here. Yes. So tell us, you mentioned that in tango, you write, in our exchange, you wrote to me when we were discussing that tango music, the arrangement has a key role. And traditional tango is built on a large collection of standards, often defined just by a melody and chords similar to jazz. And you continue to write to me that a difference from jazz where each musician builds improvisation on the standards. In tango, each ensemble, orchestra or interpreter plays the standards based on original arrangements without any improvisation. So tell me about this. I mean, tell me tell me about arrangements, how those arrangements take a key role. So my first question, is that. Would you please highlight that or sensitize us about the idea of music arrangement that that tango music is built on? Can you elaborate, please?
In a way, yes, I can try. In a way, it's the identity of, for example, a tango orchestra. Also nowadays, we have many tango bands, let's say, maybe not so big. Some are big, but it's more like quartets, quintets, 5, 6 people, or maybe 3. And still nowadays, but very much at those times, the identity of each orchestra was entirely based on this idea of the arrangement. So, for example, at the beginning, the arrangements were very simple and made by the musicians themselves. So it was more or less, okay, you will do that. They they discuss, and then they decide. But at some point, for example, with the orchestra of Aníbal Troilo, that I mentioned before, the composer of the first piece, there started to be professional arrangers, which were, one person more in the orchestra, which had this role, which was almost like a composer. I mean, you need to be a composer, yes, in a way. No, I mean, it's not exactly the same to be a composer and to be an arranger, but there are very specific skills in. It's basically to decide who plays what. No, for example, who plays the melody, who plays the accompaniment, or how it is played, and tango arrangement can be simple, but they can be very, very elaborate.
I see.
they can be almost as new composition, which sort of resemble the original. No, you can go very far. And of course, there are also new compositions coming up. But for example, if you think of Astor Piazzolla, let me introduce.
Yes,
also.
he's outstanding. Yeah,
Astor Piazzolla. He was a bandoneon player.
Yeah.
First of all, he was a composer and a bandoneon player. He used to play with this very same instrument. I don't know the specific history of my instruments,
Right.
but maybe. And but he started playing a traditional tango in the orchestras, and then he formed his own orchestra for playing traditional tango and started to make his own arrangements, which were already so complicated that the people didn't really like them. So he was not very successful with his orchestra tipica, let's say, for dancers. The dancer didn't like his style of arrangement because the music was very complex, no, very elaborate. He was one musician which studied a lot. He studied a lot of classical music, a lot of modern music. He tried. So slowly he started to feel the need to create his own tango. So that's when he became Astor Piazzolla.
I see.
No, so no more big orchestra, but his ensemble was the quintet. So piano, bandoneon, violin, double bass, and electric guitar. And there he wouldn't play the standards. He would just play his own stuff, his own composition. So, but he also made some arrangements of some standards for the bandoneon solo. I mean, for the bandoneon alone. So maybe I can play you one.
Absolutely.
It's called La Casitas de mi Viejos. La Casita de mi Viejos, it's like the house of my parents, you know, so you already feel a little bit of nostalgia. And this, so this one is the arrangement of Astor Piazzolla in his style for playing with the bandoneon solo, which was unusual for him. He would always go, you know, with his ensemble.
Absolutely fantastic. His work is so fantastic. Yes, absolutely. And but then to look at the second part of what you shared with us is about the improvisation. Can you, for example, take an arrangement and try to how do you develop that, if I may? Because it's almost like a saxophone. One is the very complex, but the other is you follow only the notes of the melody. That there is improvisation. There are two kinds of playing on the saxophone as well. Is it something like that if there is an arrangement of notes, that all the improvisations that you build or interpretation or variations that you do are based on those? If I may, for example, choose for example, if I'm just just thinking right now, nothing predetermined.
Yeah.
I'm using 4, 5 notes. The first, the third flat, the fourth flat, and the fifth and the seventh flat. So this could be one in which I'm not going to use ga re ga re sa. I'm not going to choose ga 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 ma 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 ma. So I'm not going to use anything else. Just go in the. So is it something like that? What you're mentioning in jazz, they could do just about anything. There's one way of jazz would be to touch.
No, it's not really like that. I mean, if you look at most of, apart from a few exceptions, everything is usually written down.
I see.
Okay, so also when there is a solo, for example, and you maybe take some melody and you make some ornamentations, that's usually also written down.
Yeah, fair enough.
For example, Astor Piazzolla is a good example, actually, because
before allow me to interrupt you here. Fair enough. I mean, my point is not whether you. I mean, if I, for example, if I just make if I have a composition like in the same similar structure, Meri Preet Govind Sayo Jena Ghada Mol Magila ji Satameri. This is just the first part, the chorus of that. This is a 6 centuries old composition in Rag Dhanasari, one of the Indian melodic modes. As you're familiar with sitar, so this is Rag Dhanasari, which is rarely sung in the Indian classical music. Now I've written 49 improvisations, rhythmic variations of this composition alone, from one part of it to all parts of the text. And I'm not even in. I could write 400 of them, but it's just to keep it brevity. It's about 25. I'm limiting my improvisations to about 25, 30 pages for one composition. So I've written 2 compositions and about 49, 50, 48, 49 improvisations each, keeping it limited to 25, 30 pages, as I said. Now, all improvisations that I have done are not going to divorce the original melody, the raga. The text is going to be the same. Every improvisation will only emphasize or reiterate the message which is in the text, right? Which is, in this case, is very spiritual, but not religious, is spiritual in nature. And it's activism. So it's against religious hypocrisy, dogma, rituals, beliefs, political, the tyranny and so on and so forth. They're rebels, basically, all of these people I sing. Some of the greatest rebels in this case. But never ever we would digress or venture away from the melody line. So my question to you is that whether you write or you improvise, impromptu, if you're playing, you get inspired by a melody line which comes at that moment and you take the liberty of adding a variation, a slight variation or whatever. Fair enough. But do you always improvise on the basis of like a raga, like you only follow the arrangement which has been set? Is that how I can understand, or is it something more than? I'm just trying to understand.
You mean when you say when I improvise? You mean in the moment I write
in
down
tango music, because you wrote that it is that the arrangement is different than jazz, right? That it is and when you say that improvisations, the way you build in tango music is different than how you improvise in jazz. So I'm trying to understand that statement of yours.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's different from jazz because in jazz you improvise on stage. So you go on stage and somebody while the other musicians keep the structure and the chords and the harmonic development, you in that moment follow your inspiration and play anything you like according to your taste and style. And in tango music, this almost never happens. I mean, let's say that it never happens. When you go on stage, everything is decided. So all the notes are written down.
Fair enough.
And so you can do your arrangements, but you do it at home. And you decide carefully who plays what. And when you perform, you just make your, you play what you wrote before. There are some exceptions, like, there is a way of playing in a more improvised way, which is called to play a la parrilla in Spanish. It means like by the grill, like when you do your Sunday, you meet with your friends and you just start to play.
I see.
Then of course you take some tune that you both know, and you just make a party out of it. But that's not really what a tango concert sounds like. This is more intimate setting. In a tango concert, it works much more like classical music in this respect. So everything is written down. The difference with classical music is that in classical music, what was written down by the composer is what you play, So you don't take the freedom to, do whatever you want out of that. Usually, that's how classical music works. So you go to a concert where they play Beethoven, But if you go to a tango concert, you go to the concert of the orchestra of Aníbal Troilo, and he will play whatever he likes, but in his arrangements. So it's about, and his arrangement will be different from what was written in the original tune, which was just a melodic line, maybe. But there is no really on-stage improvisation. You can do some, decorations, ornaments. That is part of the interpretation, no? Like you can do, if the melody is like this is a famous Piazzolla tune, Piazzolla melody. That's the simple version. What is, but then you go and maybe you could play. So you respect the original melody because all the significant notes are there where they should be, but you feel a lot of scales and ornamentation, and that can be improvised to some extent.
I see. What kind of ornamentation? Can you tell me about, you use the term ornamentation. I have done a lot of work on, my specialization has been the ornaments used between the 11th, 12th century till the 18th, 19th century. And in my paper, I've written more than 100 ornaments that I was able to recover. And they were all based on, they're all recoveries made from the compositions that were orally remembered, right? And they had to be gained orally, and then they became part of the oral, my oral system. I mean, I could render them, but they had to be heard. For example, the entire basis of, in the South Asian tradition is a gamak, basically. The base ornament is gamak. Because in itself, when the note has a bij rupa, that means it's like a seme, like a seed. It is re, ga, ma. I can be ma, ga, re, sa. So this is music now. This is already one note melody because there's a thought, there's an emotion. It could be ga, ma, but when you put in your breath, your pran, your life in it, ga, ma, ge, re, ga, ma, ge, re. Even this becomes a structure and a melody and a rhythm is there. But then, and these elements, these ornaments are called sooth, for example. Sooth is like a thread, right? The basic. So it's the mother of all ornaments. First, you need to stretch. So whether you are using the bow, you're always producing the sooth, the thread. Whether you're using the plectrum or you're pressing a key, pumping air in a flute, or in this is another, it's an aerophone in your hands. So the first is the bij roop, is the when you stretch, that's a sooth, like a thread. So re, ga, re, sa, that note is like that's one. But then after the sooth, the element from akar, let's say is ornament 1, but then it has no use. It is short-lived. So then the stretch. Then that's once it is stretched, so I can do this is the mean, for example. Then comes Andol. So all of these do come in. Fast oscillation. So all of these ornaments. So can you tell us about the ornaments that are that are possible in the bandoneon?
Yes.
My apologies for a longish build-up of the question.
No. Okay. It was very useful to understand. And there are actually many ornamentation and what I usually call also like special effects. You know, tango music, it's popular music, right. So you actually make use of special effects.
Just one moment. Gamak, I just forgot to, in giving illustrations, I forgot to translate the term gamak. Gamak means to go. So when you have one note individual, when you have the sooth and you pull the mean, what you're doing is going from a note. So so udat, anudat, and swarita, which is it's an ascending spiral. Is a descending spiral, and then this is the entire basis of South Asian classical tradition. It's the going from one note to another, but it also is the going from one note to the very note, the same note, without going to anywhere else. So that's the basis, the term gamak. Yes, please continue.
Yeah. So, of course, that particular way of going from one note to the other, which is typical of Indian music, we cannot do on the bandoneon because we only have single notes. But actually, you can do also in tango with the violin.
Yes.
You can slide.
Yeah, that I know. But I'm talking about this instrument. Yeah.
Okay. So there are many things you can do to enrich your, simple melody, for example. Talking about going from one note to the other, for example, you use a lot different type of scales, For example, you have to go from, you can go like, for example, a chromatic scale.
Wonderful.
This is used a lot. It can be chromatic scale or whatever kind of scale which sounds good in that moment. So this is very typical to use scales to go from one note to the other. It's probably a very similar idea from what you were explaining. It can also be not scale, but some fast pattern with a direction, let's say, which is what you can do because you have an air instrument, so it's very easy to give direction to the sound. And this, you use it in the melody, but you can also use it on the bass. This is very common, and of course you can use all the ornamentation typical of classical music, like trills, all these that you can do also on the piano. But you have special for the bandoneon some effects. For example, sometimes when you begin a melody, for example, if you have a melody which goes like to emphasize the beginning, you would attack the first note one octave higher.
I see.
So you do. Now, instead of you go. This is like a call, no? Look, I'm starting my melody, no? With these high notes. This is very, very typical of the bandoneon.
I see.
Not with the other instruments of tango. It's difficult to do something like that. With the same function, you can use dissonances.
I see.
For example, instead of doing the high octave, you can do come in with a dissonance. No, this creates tension, which is very important in tango music.
I see.
And or in the bass, like this is like a percussion effect almost. We do clusters, like with the low notes. And but there are other ways of making ornamentation with a similar concept, which are using dynamics, for example, using articulation, because you can do very legato, no, all legato, or you can play. So when you play a melody, you can, alternate this, and this is already creating a lot of richness,
right.
No? Or you can also use phrasing. This is also very important. Meaning that even if you write down the music, I don't know, a sequence of 8 notes.
I see.
Oh. I'm inventing, no? If you play like this, it doesn't taste like much, but you usually play with the duration of the notes also. It's almost like trying to make it sound like somebody speaking.
Yes.
No, it's less, tango music is, sometimes people ask, what is that makes tango tango? No? And it's not so obvious, because it's not about the notes, it's not about the compositions, it's not about the instrument, but it's all about the language or the dialect, if you want. It's all about how you play it. You can play anything you want, any piece of music, and make it sound tangish, or more or less. And phrasing, it's essential. I mean, if you don't know how to phrase in this way, which sounds a little bit more like speaking, then that doesn't work. It doesn't sound like tango.
Right. So we've spoken quite a bit. Can you play something? What can you? And then we'll go towards you told me about the 4 iconic orchestras, and they all had specific styles. And you mentioned that you can be identified by the directors. Juan D'Arienzo, Carlos Di Sarli, Anibal Troilo, and Osvaldo Pugliese. So they're all early, Juan D'Arienzo is like the same age as my eldest granduncle and my most important teacher, who was 1900 till 1995 he lived. So for me, they're very intimate. I'm really looking forward to learn more about them. But can you play something? What can you share with us today first?
Okay, I can play you a composition by Astor Piazzolla.
Yes.
This comes much later.
Yes, he's I think 1921 born. I think, and he lived till.
He was born. Next year is.
Is his 100th year? Yeah, exactly. I know.
Yeah.
So let's dedicate. Let this be the beginning of the centenary celebration. So let's remember Astor Piazzolla little.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is called Verano Porteño.
Mm-hmm.
Verano Porteño is the summer in Buenos Aires.
I see.
Verano is the summer. He wrote, the four seasons. He wrote the summer, the autumn, the winter, blah, 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 of Buenos Aires. So Porteño means from the port, which is Buenos Aires.
Right.
Yes.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Wow, wow. This was like, you mentioned that this was a arrangement made for, written for Nestor Marconi, huh?
Nestor Marconi, yes. He is another great arranger. He is still with us. Nestor Marconi is younger generation.
Yes, 1942 born, I think, yeah. And he...
the original of this piece is for the quintet, no? For Piazzolla. So, so it actually, this arrangement is built up using all the elements from the original composition. It all combined in a way to make it sound like a solo piece, no? So all the architecture of the piece, it's work of Nestor Marconi.
That's fantastic. And then he did something like La Casita de Mis Viejos. His composer is Juan Carlos Cobian, as you shared. He was born 1888 and lived till 1942, the year when Nestor Marconi was born. And the arrangement was written, and it was very interesting for me to learn that Piazzolla did not really write very many, compositions, but he's written arrangements of standards. You mentioned.
Actually, he didn't write many compositions for the bandoneon solo, so to be played just for the bandoneon. He played a huge amount of compositions, but all for the quintet or for the orchestra or for. So he was making concerts always with the bands and recording with the band. There are some pieces of music he wrote for bandoneon solo, but maybe they are, for some movie soundtrack or some different purpose.
I was coming to that. In fact, after we talk of arrangements, I would want to focus on some of the solo pieces that were written. That would be very, very interesting also for us all to understand. Because I see that the instrument, which has 5 octaves, and the possibilities that, for example, accordion has, I don't see a reason why solo music cannot be written for this instrument. It's quite comprehensive within that. It has enough. I mean, there are instruments which only do 3 octaves, and there's so much music that has been played on them. Some even with only 2 octaves. So it will be very, very interesting to go there. Would you mind sharing La Casita de Mis Viejos, if I'm pronouncing it right? Do you have that with you?
Yes, I played it before.
Oh, you played the one before was that? I see.
Yes.
I forgot to identify that.
Yes.
All right. And then we can move on from there. You mentioned about the traditional that the traditional tango music includes tango, milonga, and waltz.
Yes.
And tell us about that. The waltz. I think Anselmo Aieta wrote some. Is it?
Yes, I proposed to you this.
Yeah.
There are when you go. This is actually part of the dancing experience. When you go to dance tango in a ballroom, when there is tango night, actually you dance tangos, and then you have 3 or 4 maybe vals, which comes. It's a form of tango which comes directly from European valzer.
I see.
And then again tango, and then you go and dance maybe 3 or 4 milongas, which has milonga has a faster spirit. And but there are many beautiful valses, and I can play one for you. It's called Palomita Blanca.
I see.
Palomita Blanca is the white how is it called, the white
Bianca.
bird,
I see the white bird.
symbol of peace also.
A pigeon, yeah,
that,
pigeon.
yeah, that's, yeah.
I see. Fantastic. And then this follows, is followed by the milongas after this, is it?
Yeah, it's usually when you go to dance, it's tangos, vals, tangos again, and then milonga.
I see.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's, for example, a famous milonga, very famous, one of the most famous, is called Milonga de mis amores. It's the milonga of my loves.
I see.
So, it sounds like this.
Oh, that was fantastic.
This was like I would play with friends.
I see.
Like maybe more or less playing around the chords and the melody. Yes.
I see.
Yeah.
And talking of the four, these the directors, tell us about their uniqueness. Juan D'Arienzo, Carlos Di Sarli.
Well, yes, it's.
How do you see them?
Yeah, I would say that these four are the most maybe important because their style is very specific. Juan D'Arienzo style was very rhythmical, very energetic. They all played for dancing mostly.
I see.
And a lot of bandoneon rhythm in Juan D'Arienzo, a lot of fast notes. No, a lot of energy in that way. Carlos Di Sarli was very different. He was called El Señor del Tango, like the elegant man of tango. He was Di Sarli was piano player.
I see.
The director usually also is a player. There is no director in front of the orchestra. So he was conducting from the piano, and his music, his arrangements were very, very, very romantic, and a lot of violins.
I see.
There were no solos, no virtuosity.
I see.
But a lot of balance and elegance in the sound, and a lot of contrasts. High sounds, low sounds, and maybe violin playing a melody on the high notes, and bandoneon doing something in the low register at the same time. There are all these kind of contrasts in tango music. And also his music feels a little bit slower, not because it is really slower, but of the way of doing the accompaniment. So if I would play in the orchestra of D'Arienzo with my bandoneon, most of the time I would play this. While if I would play with Di Sarli, maybe I would play. Metronome is the same, but you make less accents in a way, so it all feels more relaxed, more also the dancing experience on this music is completely different way of dancing. And Aníbal Troilo, who was a bandoneon player, it was a and what can I say? You see, maybe I could define it like this: that with D'Arienzo made like a trademark of his music with his musical choices, like all this rhythmic, being very rhythmical, that was D'Arienzo. D'Arienzo was very rhythmical. That was the trademark. With Di Sarli, it was, a lot of violins. That's a different trademark. With Troilo, there is no such really. All the musical choices are at the service of the music. So if he needed to be romantic, then he uses the instruments in a way. If he needed to be energetic or give a different emotion. So it really was much more interesting in a way because there was much more variety. Also, the choices for this type of rhythmical patterns were much more. There are much more options in this. and maybe the only one of the few trademarks really that you can, you know, after two notes you can say it's Troilo. It was his solos with the bandoneon.
I see.
So at some point, not in all the pieces, but in several pieces, at some point you hear Troilo himself playing the solo, often with the left hand of the bandoneon.
Really?
So
I see.
yes, like this. Of course, with the rest of the orchestra making a soft rhythmic thing, no? And he had a very special, you know, touch for this kind of, and Piazzolla himself took a lot from Piazzolla. Started playing in the orchestra of Troilo.
Oh, that makes sense.
That was his job in tango, and if you listen all Piazzolla, many compositions by Piazzolla from, you know, many years later, maybe they start with all these accents and all these but then at some point in the piece there is this slow, very intimate melody, and the phrasing he uses comes a lot from Troilo.
I see. Do you remember something? Can you play something for us from Annibale Troilo? Do you have
this
something?
One that I just played.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense, okay. In the sense, more elaborate. Is this as much, or is there something which is?
No. This is from
small
a piece
pieces.
Which is called,
I see.
It's called Quejas de Bandoneon.
I see.
Which is the crying of the bandoneon. No, it's again, you know, like a person.
Yeah.
No, and so the main theme goes like this. There is a part where the violin comes in, and then there is this solo of Troilo. And and there are, yes, this is one of his specialties.
I see. Yes. Fantastic. And then, go ahead. Finish your sentence. Yeah.
No, I wanted to say the last orchestra that you mentioned, that was the orchestra of Osvaldo Pugliese. Well, by the way, if you notice, all these people, they have Italian surnames.
Yes, I was noticing that.
Yes, because they all come from.
That's the Italian connection with the tango. Yes.
Yes, because there were a lot of Italians went to Buenos Aires beginning of 20th century. Yeah. So if you look at, you know, names of people
like the Diego Maradona connections. Talking of football.
Yeah, but you know, Pugliese, Troilo, Di Sarli, D'Arienzo, they all come from Italy.
Yeah.
And Osvaldo Pugliese was a pianist also, and his orchestra was one of the ones which played for the most number of years.
I see.
I think he started his orchestra in the 30s or 40s maybe. No, I'm not sure. But he played with his orchestra until 1990 something.
Wow.
So
I see.
yes, and well, his music was more like a theater. I mean, his arrangements were very rich, very rich. It's impossible to replicate this just with one instrument. And he was very loved by all the tango community. Yes, this is. And by the way, he played in Amsterdam in the late years of his career. He was invited by the people from Codarts, from
so you got to meet with him then.
Well, this happened in the 90s.
So I see. It was before you were there.
So, yes, but actually he was then the first artistic director. I mean, Osvaldo Pugliese himself. He was the first artistic director of the tango department in the Netherlands.
Oh my goodness, I see.
Yes. So there is a very strong connection.
From Puglia, Buenos Aires,
yes.
And then back to Europe. Do you remember can you share some of his work or his way of being with the bandoneon? Do you remember something from him?
Well, it's a bit difficult to because his music is very orchestral. I mean,
see.
You really need
goes together.
Yes. So
what in Punjabi we would call a shamal baja. That means an instrument that plays along with others.
Yes, I find it really impossible to play his music.
Any line that you can remember? Any particular melody line that he plays, like to play? Do you recall something? Like something that touched you? Any sequence? It would be great to have a feel of his, Nothing that comes.
I don't know.
Okay, so we can. That's all right. No, thank you so much for telling about him. We always look him up on the net. Thanks to the technology, we can touch virtually these grand maestros of the 20th century. You mentioned about in the very beginning about how instrument was somehow. The legend is that maybe it was created for the choral or for the church music. But then there is a relationship with the choral music, or whether it's been adapted. Was it more adapted later? Because of course, when the music like Mozart's and others were there, the instrument didn't exist at the time, and there's a lot of work which is being done. For example, Professor Giorgio Della Role and Alexander and so many others are doing, adapting. Music written for the organ and for the clavichord and etc., bringing down to that. So is it part of similar exercise where older compositions are being looked at and then being tried on the bandoneon? Is it something similar?
Well, this is. This is my personal idea also that. It's interesting to take music from a different context, for example, from centuries ago, and play it with instruments like the bandoneon, which didn't exist. I mean, it's not for just to do something funny, But, for example, if we are speaking about choral music, it's interesting because if you look at the register of human voices, and the register of the
there.
bandoneon. So the left hand of the bandoneon almost, I mean, it matches the register.
You mentioned about the cello, similarity with the cello is very human voice-like.
And the same goes with female voice. So it's kind of natural
two-in-one
to take music which was written for the choir and play it with the bandoneon without choir, but you know, it will work. It will be something different, of course, from the choir, but for me it's interesting because I don't find it unrespectful towards, I don't know, Mozart, for example.
Of course.
Because I think that when you make music, there are many elements that come together when you play the music. It's the composer, it's who plays the music, it's the audience, it's the instrument. Mm-hmm. So in any combinations of these things makes it unique.
Right.
Just a different public makes it different.
Yeah.
Or playing it online or playing in a theater.
And I'm sure if Mozart was here today, he would have, of course, tried the way he was a wizard. He would have tried every instrument that there is. Absolutely. Yeah. So when did you, before you share your work, your adaptations, which I was pointing towards, tell us, when did it begin? When did this idea come to you? Is it recent, or it was there already from the very beginning when you were at the conservatory in Rotterdam?
No, it's. When you study bandoneon, usually you play some, classical pieces, maybe Baroque pieces, but more like an exercise.
I see.
It's more like a technical exercise. Mm-hmm. And since a few years, I have been thinking that, for example, if you take music from the Baroque period, which was written for the clavichord or some keyboard which existed at the time, or for the organ, and of course you can take the bandoneon and pretend it's an organ, because actually it is.
It is an organ,
in a way. It is an organ, but it's not, because an organ it's another instrument. So you can you can use it as an organ, but I think it's more interesting to use it as a bandoneon. I mean, which can also make sounds similar to the organ, but it's a different instrument, so it has more possibilities or different possibilities. So I'm interested in taking this music, maybe from centuries ago, and see what the bandoneon, how the bandoneon can be used with all its possibilities. I mean, because if I should make it sound like a harpsichord, then I play the harpsichord. I mean, what's the point of struggling to playing on the bandoneon? Just for the sake of it. So if something interesting comes out from the fact that I actually used another instrument, then there I am interested, because then we have something new. And then that music, which was written maybe centuries ago, take a new meaning maybe, or a new perspective, or something.
Right.
Anyway,
so you worked on Mozart's.
Yes, I did this adaptation of a famous piece for choir, Ave Verum, by Mozart. Anybody who played a choir, at least in Europe, has sung it. At least,
yes.
So.
Let's enjoy that. Yes. Fantastic. That's amazing. You know, compliments for that. It shows the possibility, and no wonder you've chosen to look into that. And then you you were mentioning about the early music and Baroque, early era,
Yes.
and the Baroque music. So you again, it was to do with the possibility that you mentioned about the male and the female voices.
Yes, this is
very interesting how you can
something
take
I've
both.
been working on is some music from Girolamo Frescobaldi.
I see.
Girolamo Frescobaldi is from the 17th century, so it's early Baroque.
Early,
and he wrote hundreds of pieces of music for keyboards, no? And it's interesting because I think that he was trying to make instrumental music more important, let's say. I mean, before that was a lot of singing voices, and he produced a lot of material for instrumental music. And I remember reading the introduction he wrote on one of these collections of pieces that he composed, and he was saying that you should play this music following your emotions, your affections, not being rigid on on tempos, on articulation, on all the musical elements, but he was leaving a lot of room to the interpreter to bring life to this music, no? So, and I found it. What I was reading from Frescobaldi that he wrote 4 centuries ago. It really reminded me a little bit of the way tango music works, no? Because what is written on paper is just, you know, the starting point for your interpretation, and you can make a lot of different choices. So I found it stimulating in this way. So I tried to, you know, play this music with a bandoneon.
I see.
Which is a little bit challenging, but in a way, it feels like early Baroque music, and even if I play on the bandoneon.
Yeah. No, it's very. I mean, that era is very intimate for me because my work. I mean, two of the greatest composers that I worked with are, you know, 16th century and early 17th century. It corresponds to the work of Guru Arjan, the 5th Guru of the Sikhs, and his father, the 4th Guru, the 4th Nanak, Guru Ramdas, and between them, that's the biggest body of work that has reached me, original work that has reached me. And the kind of ornamentations, they've been like the actual or the source of musicological research. The actual body of my work is based on their work. The ornamentation they use, the mutualism between because of the number of compositions that came, I was able to see the patterns, how they're composing, when they are talking to the mind, when they are like singing to the mind, when they're singing to the people, when they're singing to the creator, when they're singing to themselves, right? Themselves. And so this is very intimate for me, the work of Girolamo Frescobaldi. So thank you so much for sharing, for agreeing to share that work. And in advance, that you're taking the music from that era, which is very intimate for me to see, to do the comparison of what was happening in Europe or any other part of the world versus what was happening in Punjab and Northwest in South Asia. So I'm very excited actually to hear your work, the adaptation that you've done for the bandoneon. Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Yes, I'm curious.
So this is a few of these pieces called corrente, which is actually a ternary dance.
Yeah, fast. Corrente is fast. No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
to run.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, this was one of the. You can see I try to use the bandoneon, to put the bandoneon in this music. Mostly uses using articulation in this particular music. So because you can also try to play like it is an organ, no? For example, in a more organ way, it would be. This can be.
Yes.
Or maybe you can pretend to be an harpsichord and then or something like that. And I tried to I tried to put myself into the bandoneon, no, and think. What shall the bandoneon do?
Yeah.
How can I do the phrasing? How can I all the elements, all the rhythm? How can I highlight the different parts of the music? So yeah, that's the work I'm doing on this music.
I see.
So,
yeah. Any other piece that you've you're working on?
Yeah, I have a few more of these Fresco Baldi.
Oh, really? Please,
yes.
It'll be great to see some of your work on that. Yeah. It's very interesting for me to look at that. One of the features of music from that time is the singing of the pade. Well, in contemporary terms, well, it's been colloquially called as dhrupad, genre of singing, but predominantly works in threes also. So they're going back to that time, what was happening in South Asia were predominantly in threes, and they were reaching fours, of course, and seven, but there was again the 3 and 4 basically were both happening. And even if there were 12 beats, there were 4 threes, not 3 fours. So even if it's a slow composition, it would be going in threes again. For example, well, what's coming to my mind? But it's 12 beats. The cycle will change in 12 beats. So it's very interesting to see, or faster ones. Tande darbar darmande, Tande darbar darmande. interesting to see how we as human nature, we're building from one note, then the idea of developing how music developed. Two notes came, the three notes, the combination of one and two, different then three was achieved, four was obviously, then three and four, seven beats come in, and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting to see how, the Baroque and early music, even in Greece, the music that was happening, multiple uses going from three to four, that was happening. Very, very interesting. And especially with tango, there's so much emphasis on the rhythm.
Yes, of course. Yes, it's actually details of how you play the rhythmical parts are a strong part of the your style.
This one, for example, the ones that you played starts in anticipations. For example, ta dha trikr ta dha. So da da, we call it the duji dha, to come with the second emphasis which comes. And both the compositions that you played were in threes. So that's why I was inspired. I mean, I thought of sharing this similarity that there's so much of threes being used.
Yes, a lot of dances are in threes. I mean, it's not only the waltzer, which is very well known, but it's actually interesting that these dances from Europe, let's say, which came to South America with the immigrants,
right,
then were somehow integrated in the not only in tango music, but also in the what is called the folklore.
Yes.
Folklore music is, let's say, tango music is actually something specific of the city of Buenos Aires and Montevideo, which is just opposite the river in Uruguay. And but it's something very connected with the town. Suburbs, immigration, towns, and but in the countryside, in the enormous countryside of Argentina, there's no tango. I mean, they were playing other things, and they were playing a huge variety of dances and songs, and they I think they also somehow incorporated the European dances. I mean, and many are in three actually, and many have also a polyrhythmic feeling.
I see.
Like it's an alternation or overposition of 2 against 3, or 6/8 and 3, and this music is usually played with the guitar, folkloric instrument by definition, and they have a special drum which is called bombo.
Yeah.
It's a big cylindric drum that you hold it, which makes 2 type of sounds. It makes a very low boom and a very
sharp,
and then on the ring you have a very sharp, And so with these 2 sounds you already create this polyrhythmic, and then also the bandoneon is used, or the accordion. And I can.
It would be fantastic if you can share some of the stuff.
I can share
from
it's
that.
Not, it would be. It would be nice to have somebody.
I know.
With a guitar, but anyway.
Is there someone that you in the same city in Parma? Is there someone you have a couple of friends who play along, or you only get together? You guys get together for different parts of Europe when you play?
No. Actually, the group where I play, which is Tango Spleen, is based here.
Oh, in Parma itself. I see. Oh.
Yeah, Parma and surroundings.
I see, of course.
We are close. And so actually it's easier to work together because
of course.
You can work together. Actually,
that's true.
Yeah. And
what are you sharing? What are you sharing from the Argentinian folklore?
I'm sharing one very famous piece, which is called Nostalgias Santiagueñas, which is
nostalgia.
Nostalgia of Santiago.
I see.
Santiago meaning the city of Santiago del Estero, which is in the north of Argentina. And this is a samba.
I see.
Which is not to be confused with the Brazilian samba.
Interesting.
Because Brazilian samba is, a very happy and
that's what we're used to. Yes.
But actually, Argentinian samba, which is written with Z, it's written samba.
I see.
But it's pronounced the same. It's pronounced samba. It's a very intimate piece. It's very. It can be nostalgic or sad or whatever. I mean, this one is about nostalgia. So, and let's see.
Yeah.
And this the samba is in 3 or 6. I mean, it's an alternation of 6/8 and 3. So it goes.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I think basically in 6/8 with some parts in 3. So I will try to
look forward to that. Fantastic. And it's very sort of very continuous, like almost like the organ kind of demonstration that you gave. Very sort of long.
Yes,
sort of, the slide, the long slide is there.
Very lyrical.
Very lyrical. Yes.
Lyrical.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And on the contrary,
and this was by you mentioned that it was by Hermanos Abalos.
My two brothers, hermanos Abalos.
I see, there are two guys, not one.
Yes, at least two.
At least two, yes.
And they are, the very famous folkloric musicians.
I see.
Very famous folkloric musicians, yes.
And any other composer who worked on this?
A special one, which is actually, it's this one is a composition for the bandoneon.
Oh, I see.
But it's by a bandoneon player which was called Fernando Tell, and he composed this piece which is called Regalón, and it's inspired, let's say, by one of these folkloric rhythm which was called gato. Gato, which means it's the cat. But it's one of these rhythm, and this is a completely different character.
I see. Fantastic.
Sorry, I messed it up a little bit, but...
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I got to know when you messed up.
Happens. When you got the idea.
Yes. Absolutely. Fernando Tell told me that, oh, look at that, he messed me up. Tell Bruno not to mess with me. So, how do you see the future? I mean, what is it? I mean, you already shared with us that from what was written, for the bandoneon as part of the tango music. But then the fact that you've been inspired and attracted towards, of course, then the adaptation of folklore, Argentinian folklore, the waltz, etc., the samba. You just shared something with us. You've now been attracted towards the choral music, the male and the female voices that they go, and of course Mozart, early and Baroque era music that has interested you. How do you see the future of this instrument?
Well, I think it's a bright future. And I mean, because I think it has a lot of possibilities, a lot of possible roles in many different types of music. I mean, apart from the obvious thing of tango music, also new tango compositions, they are full of bandoneon everywhere. But and that's very interesting. I mean, also I play some new tango compositions, but for example, I played a concert with my group and other people, a progressive rock concert.
Really?
Yes. Actually, you were mentioning.
I didn't know rock was also progressive.
Yeah, progressive rock was.
It isn't conservative, is it?
No, it's no, no. It has to do. It was in the 70s, 60s, the 70s. There was this type of rock music which was taking a lot from classical music. Actually.
I see.
So they were making complicated, elaborated arrangements with strange rhythms but we have here in Italy Bernardo Lanzetti, that you mentioned also before in my curriculum, and he is a famous singer of this type of rock music. And a few years ago, we had a project together with my group and with Tango Spleen and him, and we had this big event where he was playing this rock repertoire and rearranged for the tango group, and it was amazing. I mean, it was fantastic. Also. I often record bandoneon parts for pop musicians, for filmmakers. So I see really a lot of possibilities. The thing is, the bandoneon is not very well known outside the tango world. Say. But it's slowly, it's slowly getting more and more known. Also, we have now new people building bandoneons. I mean, we have a production of bandoneons again.
I see.
So it's getting easier and easier to actually have an instrument, because it's it can be really difficult to find an instrument.
I see. Is it the same, like, for example, Mirko's work at Scandali? Are they making, the accordion makers are also making bandoneon, or is it different? They're different makers?
Well, in general, it's different makers.
I see.
So we have people. We have a few persons in Germany and Belgium and now also in Buenos Aires we have luthiers.
Does Honor, for example, does Honor also make still? Have they started, or it's not there?
I don't know.
They're different.
I don't remember if
altogether.
Honor is building bandoneon now, but Mirko at Scandali is building bandoneon.
I see.
Yes, and so there are several options today. The main issue is I think the production of the actual reeds. I mean the metal things which vibrate
the tongue,
sound, and the reed plates. So these metal plates where the reeds are mounted, and because everything else is just wood. So it's, I mean, you get the right wood and then you can. But to make the reeds and the reed plates, that's difficult. Especially, it's difficult to replicate the materials and the process that they were using 100 years ago.
I see.
So this doesn't mean that you have to do the instruments exactly how it was 100 years ago, but in a way, you look for that sound.
So those manuscripts or technical that technical know-how has not come, is not survived in terms of instrument building, bandoneon making from what was East Germany, the technical drawings, materials, composition. Is it all gone, or has something survived? Or is it like reverse engineering that you have an instrument and then you open it up and then replicate it?
Well, that you can do. That's what most people do. But the problem is, again, the manufacturing of the reed plates and the reeds. And I think now they all come from one place in Czech Republic.
I see.
I think there is one producer. Which is good, but you can tell the difference between modern instruments and historic instruments. And the question is, does it sound different because it's new and the other one is 1 century old? Like, with instruments, they evolve with time. So it's continuous, research towards having. I mean, we have very good modern instruments anyway. I mean, I know I have old instruments, but I know many other professional bandoneonists which use modern instruments.
I see.
Built in Germany or in Argentina. It also depends on your style of playing and on which music you play, because maybe, for example, modern instruments have high notes which are a bit louder compared to the low notes in comparison to the old instruments. So you have more options.
Right. How much does an old bandoneon cost? Like if you were to get something 100 years old or older?
Well, it depends on the conditions.
Of course.
Of course. If it has, if the voices, I mean the reeds, are in good conditions, and the instrument is, well kept and everything works and blah blah blah, it can be 6,000-7,000 euros. 8. Well, then it's the market, no? But
I see.
But that's more or less also the price of a new instrument.
Oh, I see.
If you go for the very high quality models, you are around 8,000 or. But you can find instruments for used instruments, historical instruments, maybe not the super good ones. The okay ones, you can have them for 3,000 or 2. It depends very much because making repairs and restorations is expensive.
Is expensive, yeah.
So
and how is it compared in terms of cost with the accordion, a good quality accordion?
I honestly, I'm not sure about the accordion. I guess the accordion is more expensive.
Yeah, of course, it's much more paraphernalia and more.
And it's
that
much
goes into
more
it.
complicated.
Yes.
From a mechanical point of view, it's much more complex. The accordion. You have all these registers. Yeah. You have much higher number of reeds inside because you have all these.
Yeah. How is from being a scientist to a musician now? How do you find your life? A total 180 degree, yes. But any regrets that you're not a scientist anymore, or has your has a scientist's mind helped you in your musical quest?
That's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, I absolutely don't regret my scientific experience, and I think that I still have a scientific mind
That
in a
doesn't
way,
go.
scientific approach to things. But on the same time, I asked myself this question actually over the years, no, and apart from the love for music and for tango and for the bandoneon, it's maybe also a question of looking for some kind of adventure. No, I find this life more adventurous in a way. You know, I travel a lot, I meet people, and well, I mean, it can be for me or not for somebody else, but I mean, I find it more stimulating in a way. Even though I love science and I loved my what I was doing, and actually it's very precious for me. I mean, what I did before. But also at one point I felt that I should. I mean, I felt the need to do this change because otherwise I would have stayed for all my life with the idea, what if I had, you know, start play, and then it would be uncomfortable, you know. So I'm always for trying, and then okay, maybe it goes wrong, but at least you tried. No, you made the experience and you learn something. No, if you don't try, you don't act, then maybe you don't learn anything.
Yeah.
So I am an experimentalist.
Yeah,
as you see.
and in Italia, where there is, you know, music, right from, it's the motherland of music. The
Yes.
language of music is Italian in the West. There's so much that has happened. The advent of instruments from early music to the Baroque era, the coming of the lira di braccios, the recorder flutes, the viola da gamba, name them, organs, for example, the harpsichord, the clavichords, etc., etc. Piano comes in, violin is from viola d'amore, etc., the advent of the violin. I mean, it's just so much, right? And then you, as an Italian, playing the bandoneon in Italy. How is that? I mean, is it difficult, or people are welcoming, or they say, who's this guy? Ma che fa? What happened to this guy? Ma che ha fatto con questo ragazzo di Parma?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit unusual.
It is.
You know? It's unusual.
Although, if I may interrupt you, although when you mention that all of the greatest composers in Argentina are Italian, Pugliese, da Puglia, and still the brotherly or step-sisterly treatment that you might have to face in Italy.
Well, first of all, tango music, especially tango dancing, it's extremely popular in Italy.
I see.
It's very popular everywhere in the world nowadays. You can go to milongas. Milongas are also the place where you go and dance tango. No, it's not only the music, but also the place where you go. And you can find a milonga anywhere in the world. I mean, in normal times. Now with the pandemic, everything is closed. But of course, you can go and dance tango in Russia, in Korea, in Japan, I don't know in India actually, but probably also in India.
Yes, there's plenty.
In China and in America, in United States and everywhere. But in Italy, it's especially popular. I mean, the dancing. So there are a lot of opportunities, to play for dancers, and of course, but it often happens to me that at the end of the performance, the people come and to greet you and to congratulate you, and they sometimes they are very surprised that I am Italian. They think I should be Argentinian, because usually tango musicians, especially bandoneon players, but it's growing. It's growing. The bandoneon community in Europe and in Italy, it's growing. In other countries in Europe, it's already more developed, like in the Netherlands or in France. But it's growing. I have constantly receiving calls from people who want to start, and they're looking for an instrument. Yeah,
that's nice. So, but thank you so much for taking time out and introducing the instrument to us all. Of course, my compliments. Especially, I'm looking forward to learning more, and of course, I'm sort of eagerly waiting for more adaptations of the early and Baroque music by you. Look forward to keeping a tag in a few months. Maybe we can again be in a conversation. I could get to ask you, so what have you been up to in the last 6 months? And how have you been utilizing your...
Something I started, and I have, a long way to work on.
Exactly. Yes. I look forward to seeing that. And would you like to share something before we end the conversation?
You mean some music?
Yeah, some music. Yeah.
Well, I have the perfect goodbye piece.
I mean, goodbye. I mean, if you want to play more than one, I'm all ears.
Okay.
I mean, yes.
It's okay. It's a very simple piece, actually. It's called Buenas noches, che bandoneon. So it's like good sleep well, like sleep well, dear bandoneon. and it's a composition by Juan José Mosellini, who is a bandoneon player, who is still living in Paris, I think, in France. Yes. It's one of the most important interpreters.
I see.
So.
Fantastic. That was very, very beautiful. As the evening draws to a close and the night begins, it's time for that lullaby, lullaby-like melodic movement. Thank you so much, Francesco.
Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure really to get to. Thanks to Giorgio. I was very keen. In fact, I wanted to, after looking at the accordion, I wanted to see the bandoneon from close, and I thought that he will introduce me to an Argentinian. So when he said, no, he's a young boy from Parma, I said, oh, really? I mean,
Did he say young?
no,
Because
that was my twist, my tango twist on my ornamentation, you see. But that's a 21st century ornamentation. No, it's been a pleasure to sort of know the instrument from so close, to get to know this instrument. And of course, you have a YouTube channel. I invite everybody to look at your YouTube channel as well and to subscribe it. And as one of India's theatre actors and directors, I think she sums it up very well. She says, Ramanjit Kaur is the name. You'll see in the comments, is what lyrical and melancholic sound, maestro Francesco Bruno, the gentle movement of fingers and arms creates a tender flow of emotions. So I thought that is quite an aesthetical response. And it sums it all in a way. But of course, I'm sort of, and we have Sanjay Baweja, who's just written, it's a very tuneful instrument. He writes in Indian English, and then I think the capacity, that the bandoneon has is mind-boggling. I mean, it's quite surprising. Yeah. I didn't realize that it has so much from far. Also because mostly when we get to hear it is when it is when it is placed within a trio or a quartet or a quintet or or an ensemble. And the reason, and I learned today from you that not many solo pieces as such are there which have been created. It works in tandem with other instruments. It swims in the contrast created by the violins and guitars, etc., different kinds of music that you've shared with us today. That has been quite interesting, and I'm looking forward to to the future where some composer will come who knows the instrument intimately enough to be able to explore the possibilities and establish the bandoneon also as a solo instrument. I mean, to create some virtuosic, if I may, pieces for, or complete pieces for the bandoneon. I think it deserves. I mean, with 4 octaves, possible, and especially with one which is shared between the two, there is a space, there is a capacity. I'm surprised not much has been seen within that regard.
No, I mean, there have been in the last decades, I mean, compositions for the bandoneon, also for the bandoneon solo, more or less coming from the tango.
I think I lost the signal.
Un
attimo, Francesco, era
una narrow niche.
Un attimo, c'era qualcosa fatto male con il segnale. Posso ripetere?
Sì. I was saying that there have been written new compositions in the last decades, let's say, for the bandoneon, also for the bandoneon solo, and with more or less tango inspiration, but but still it's a very, very narrow niche, let's say, no? And that's also because if you really want to exploit the instrument when playing solo, it's really tricky to write the music if you are not a bandoneon player.
Yes, exactly.
Because there are some things which are technically more or less difficult, which you know only if you know how the instrument works. So that makes it a little bit more complicated to write a repertoire for bandoneon solo. It usually comes from bandoneon players,
yes,
which become themselves composers or arrangers. No, but it's very rare to have somebody who is not a bandoneon player to write a composition for bandoneon solo, which really is for bandoneon solo, I mean, which is not just a few melodic lines or something, no? And usually, if you are a bandoneon player with some experience, you can immediately see, no, was this written by a bandoneon player or
it's
not?
almost like having a bicycle designer saying that I'm designing an airplane. So he will put the bell, but not realizing that in an airplane you don't need a bell.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I understand. That's why I said that it's somebody who knows the instrument intimately well has to really know every nook and corner. As my teacher Bhai Arjun Singh Tarangar would say, कि साज दी हर जगह पता होनी चाहिए थी, that you should know every nook and corner of the instrument. Then you say, okay, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. So maybe I will also start making my own composition.
Yes.
So I will take your hint.
I was sort of trying to pinch you that adaptations are important, but I think it's important to look at I think the future, and that's why I asked you, what's the future ahead? Yes, it is important that what is happening in accordion. It's very important to look at the repertoire that already exists for the accordion or any other instrument, but let's say for the accordion, we're looking at this family of instruments. But then the extraordinary work which Giorgio and Alexandros and others are doing, Semyonov and others who have done, where you're looking at adaptations from the classical music, Baroque music and early Baroque, late, Renaissance period and so on and so forth. But then comes the looking at what you can do now, having that as a hindsight. So I think that there lies some extraordinary possibility.
We will see.
Thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
today. And yes, I appreciate that.
I'm looking forward, maybe once that I have something new, maybe we can have another.
Absolutely. You never know. Maybe I'll write something for bandoneon too.
You're welcome.
We'll work on that. I'll have to find a bandoneon just to explore some of the possibilities, and then or I'll have to work in tandem with you to see if you can do this. I'll have to make you my bandoneon and see, well, does this work? He said, no, that doesn't work. Does this work? No, you can do this too. Oh, does this work? He said, no, how dare you? I'm not a piano, I'm not an organ, I'm a bandoneon. So maybe, there'll be something in which, but of course, I think it's possible. We'll do something. I've had some ideas while you were playing. We'll explore that.
Great. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'll talk to you soon. Yes. Bye-bye. So dosto, AC meri varta. This was my conversation with Maestro Francesco Bruno. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. This is quite a surprise actually to see instrument up so close, the way it is. I think it has an extraordinary possibility. This instrument is quite something. For me to learn today that it has 5 octaves. Well, the conversation was mostly in English, so I don't have to repeat. I'll maybe switch over to Punjabi. ਦੋਸਤੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਜ਼ ਹੈ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੁੰਜਾਇਸ਼ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਾਕਫੀਅਤ ਹੋਈ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਾ, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਛਾਣਨੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਛਾਣਨਾ ਦੇਖਣ ਲਈ ਕਿ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਐਕੋਰਡੀਅਨ ਅਤੇ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਪਏ ਆ, ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੱਢੋ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਏ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬੜਾ ਦੁੱਖ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਕੱਲਾ ਵਾਜਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹਾਰਮੋਨੀਅਮ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਘਸੀਟੀ ਫਿਰਦੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਰੀਡ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਣੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਉਹਦਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਹੈ, ਟੱਬਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਗੁੰਜਾਇਸ਼ ਬੜੀ ਹੈ ਯਾਰ। ਇਹ ਬੈਂਡੋਨੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 3 ਸਪਤਕ ਇੱਕ ਹੱਥ ਅਤੇ 3 ਦੂਜੇ ਹੱਥ ਅਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਸਪਤਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਂਝਾ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ 5 ਸਪਤਕ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਾਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਨਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਇੱਕੋ ਵੇਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਹੱਥ ਵਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਔਰ ਇਹਦੀ ਗੁੰਜਾਇਸ਼ ਬੜੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਐਕੋਰਡੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਕਮਾਲ ਹੈ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਬਟਨ ਵਾਲਾ ਐਕੋਰਡੀਅਨ ਹੈ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਕੀਬੋਰਡ ਵਾਲਾ ਐਕੋਰਡੀਅਨ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੰਮ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਦਨਸੀਬ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿ ਇੰਨੇ ਸਾਜ਼ ਹਨਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਹੱਥ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਪੱਖਾ ਹੀ ਦੇਈ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਫਾਲਤੂ 'ਚ, ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਪੱਖਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਛੋਟਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਘੱਟ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਹਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਆਪੇ ਭਰ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਵੀ ਤੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਕਹਿ, ਤੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਕਹਿ, ਨਹੀਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਇੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਹੈ, ਮਤਲਬ ਲੁੱਕ ਐਟ ਦੀ ਗੁੰਜਾਇਸ਼। ਸਾਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਔਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖੱਬਾ ਹੱਥ ਹੈ, ਦੂਜਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੱਥ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਵਰਤਦੇ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ। ਪਖਾਵਜ ਹੋਵੇ, ਤਬਲਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜਾਂ ਜੇ ਗੱਜ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਾਜ਼ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੱਥ ਸਿਰਫ ਗੱਜ ਹੀ ਘਸੀਟਦਾ, ਇੱਕ ਹੱਥ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਜੇ ਰਬਾਬ ਲੈ ਲਈਏ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਦਿ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਹੈ ਉਂਗਲਾਂ ਦਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਰਤ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਪਰ ਜੇ ਜੀਲ ਫੜ ਲਈ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਗੱਜ ਦੀ ਥਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਹੱਥ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦਾ, ਦੂਜਾ ਟੁਨਕਾਰ ਹੀ ਉਹ ਲੈ ਹੀ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਾਹ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਟਕੋਰ ਦਿੰਦਾ। ਪਰ ਇਹ ਸਾਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੁੰਜਾਇਸ਼ ਬੜੀ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਆਸ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ 'ਚੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਇੰਸਪਾਇਰ ਹੋਣਗੇ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸੰਜੇ ਬਵੇਜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਇਸਕੋ ਮੈਂ ਗਜ਼ਲ ਮੈਂ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰੂੰਗਾ ਜਬ ਪੋਸੀਬਲ ਹੋ। ਦੇਖੋ ਮਤਲਬ ਜਨਾਬ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਸਪੀਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਗਜ਼ਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਸਤੇਮਾਲ ਕਰਨਗੇ, ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਸੋਚ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਲਾਸੀਕਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਾਜੇ 'ਤੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਜੋ ਵਾਜੇ 'ਤੇ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਕੁ ਰਾਗ ਬਚ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਬੜਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਚਦਾ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਮਾਲਕੌਂਸ ਛੇੜਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਵਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਵਾਜੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੀਡਸ ਦਾ ਅਰੇਂਜਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਵੱਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ 20th ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਦੇ अर्ਲੀ 20th ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੋਇਆ, ਵੱਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਲਾਸੀਕਲ ਖਿਆਲ ਗਾਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਵਾਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਗਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਜੇ ਵਾਜਾ ਵਜਾਣਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਦੀ ਗੁੰਜਾਇਸ਼ ਦੇਖੋ ਨਾ, ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਨੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਕਾਰਡਸ ਵੀ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਾਪਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਾਜੇ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਦਬਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਅਤੇ ਵਜਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ। ਇਮੈਜਿਨ, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਸੋਚ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਖਿਆਲ ਗਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਅਤੇ ਖੱਬੇ ਹੱਥ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕਾਰਡ ਸਾਪਾ ਜਾਂ ਸਾ ਨੀ, ਸਾਗਾ ਪਾ, ਸਾਮਾ ਨੀ, ਸਾਵਾ, ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕੁਛ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੱਥ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਰਤ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਅਤੇ ਦੂਜਾ ਹੱਥ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਇਨ ਐਂਟੀਸਿਪੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਾਂ ਇਨ ਰੈਟਰੋਸਪੈਕਟ ਜਾਂ ਮਿਲਤ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਨ ਯੂਨੀਜਨ। ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਗੁੰਜਾਇਸ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੈਰਾਨ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪਲੋਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਨਲਾਇਕੀ ਆ ਸਾਊਥ ਏਸ਼ੀਆ ਦੀ, ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਨਲਾਇਕੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਗਿਣ ਲਈ ਅੱਜ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਹੋਰ ਕੀ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ? ਰਮਨ ਜੀ says, completely agree, more Bandoneon solo compositions could be created to explore. Yes, that's true, as I mentioned, and that you've found harmonium very limited. Yes, not having much depth and not such an attractive sound, and rather sound I would avoid as an artist. Yes, it would be wonderful to explore this family with Indian musical compositions. Absolutely. और संजय बवेजा राइट्स के रिदम भी साथ में मिल सकता है, बिल्कुल। आई मीन ਉਹਦੇ जो गुंजाइश कंपित जो अलेक्जेंडर ने और जॉर्ज डेला रोले ने जो दिखाया कंपन और इतना छेड़ते ने साज ਨੂੰ, बहुत पॉसिबिलिटी है, बहुत पॉसिबिलिटी है। सो दोस्तों फ्राइडे ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਸਾਬਿਰ ਖਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਕਿ ਫਰੋਖਾਬਾਦ ਘਰਾਣੇ ਦੇ ਖਲੀਫਾ ਹਨਗੇ। ਮੇਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੈਠਕ ਸੀ, ਮੈਂ ਨੰਬਰ ਗਿਣ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿੰਨਵਾਂ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਮੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਦਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਵੇਲਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਆਸ ਕਰਦਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਜੁੜੋਗੇ। ਔਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਬੈਠਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ। ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਰਮਨਜੀਤ ਕੌਰ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੋਸਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਦ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਿਵ ਆਰਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੰਸਥਾ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ ਫੈਸਟੀਵਲ ਹੋਸਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਅਕੈਡਮੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਹਰ ਸਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ ਫੈਸਟੀਵਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਕਵਿਤਾ ਪੜ੍ਹੋ। ਮੈਂ ਕਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਪਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਲਿਖਦਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਹਾਂ, ਬਗੈਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਕਵੀ ਸਮਝਿਆ। ਅਤੇ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ 6 ਵਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਜੇ ਤਸਵੀਰ ਦਿਖਾ ਸਕਾਂ। How do I do? Okay, I think I can do like this. Like this. Let's see, what can I do? ਇਹ ਮੈਂ ਟਰਾਈ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਓਹ ਯੈਸ, ਆ ਗਿਆ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਪੁਜੋਰ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ ਅੱਡਾ, ਮਹਿਸਾਸੁਰ ਮਰਦਨੀ, ਟਰਾਇੰਫ ਓਵਰ ਇਵਲ ਹੈਗਾ। ਇਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਸਮਾਂ ਕੱਢੋਗੇ। ਲੈਟ ਮੀ ਰਿਮੂਵ ਮਾਈ ਸੈਲਫ ਫਰੋਮ ਹਿਅਰ ਐਂਡ ਮਾਈ ਨੇਮ ਫਰੋਮ ਹਿਅਰ ਐਂਡ let me see if I can go close. Yes, here we go. मैं ਲੱਭ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਬਟਨ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਲੋਜ਼ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਹ ਟ੍ਰਿਬਿਊਟ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੱਡੇ ਕਵੀ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਬੰਗਾਲ ਦੇ, ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ ਪੁਜੋਰ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ ਅੱਡਾ ਮਹਿਸਾਸੁਰ ਮਰਦਨੀ, ਟਰਾਇੰਫ ਓਵਰ ਇਵਲ ਇਹਦਾ ਮਜ਼ਮੂਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਸ ਕਵੀ ਦਰਬਾਰ ਦਾ। ਟ੍ਰਿਬਿਊਟ ਟੂ ਦੀ ਅਵਾਰਡ ਵਿਨਿੰਗ ਬੰਗਾਲੀ ਪੋਇਟ ਐਂਡ ਰਾਈਟਰ। ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਛੋਟੀ ਸਕਰੀਨ 'ਚ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਪਾਓਗੇ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੈਂ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਦਿੰਦਾ। The late Nabanita Dev Sen, her daughter Nandana Sen will present the Bengali originals along with the translations of her mother's poems. Poets for the evening ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲਿਖੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਪੋਸਟਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। the creative arts ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੋਸਟਰ ਹੈਗਾ, ਮ੍ਰਿਤੁੰਜੈ ਕੁਮਾਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ, ਰਾਜੇਸ਼ ਗੁਪਤਾ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ, ਕੋਈ ਭਾਈ ਬਲਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੈਗਾ in ਪੰਜਾਬੀ, then ਸੰਗੀਤਾ ਬਾਪੂਲੀ ਸਿੰਧੀ, ਤਾਜ ਰਿਜ਼ਵੀ ਉਰਦੂ, ਅਨੀਤਾ ਥੰਪੀ ਮਲਿਆਲਮ, ਨੀਲੂਫੇਰ ਕੁਯਾਸ Turkish, Ali Abdullahi Persian and German, Anjum Katyal English, Sudeep Sen, he's outstanding too. It's been wonderful knowing him. In English, Sunil Bhandari English, Arthur Cardozo English ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। Musical interludes ਹੋਣਗੇ, ghazals by Samarjit Guha, and ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੋਡਰੇਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਰਾਜੂ ਰਮਨ ਨੇ। ਔਰ ਇਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਾਈਂਡਲੀ ਸਮਾਂ ਨੋਟ ਕਰ ਲੈਣਾ। as you can see, it's hosted by presented by the Creative Arts Academy। ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਥੀਏਟਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਿਵ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਾਈਟ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਚਾਹ ਹੋਵੇ, ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਔਨਲਾਈਨ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਇਸ ਵਾਰ ਤਾਂ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਸੀਟਾਂ ਸੂਟਾਂ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਫੁੱਲ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰਨ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਹਰਜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ 3 ਮਹੀਨਿਆਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਫੇਰ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰੋ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਲਾਹਾ ਲਓ, ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਸਪਾਇਰ ਕਰੋ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਮੇਰੀ ਇੰਗੇਜਮੈਂਟ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਥੋਂ ਇਸ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ 'ਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਸ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ 'ਤੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰੀ ਭਰਾਂਗਾ ਚੰਦ ਮਿੰਟਾਂ ਲਈ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਗੁਲਦਸਤਾ ਹੈ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦਾ, ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਟਰਕਿਸ਼ ਤੋਂ ਜਰਮਨ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ, ਪਰਸ਼ੀਅਨ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਯੂਰੋਪੀਅਨ ਤੋਂ ਏਸ਼ੀਆਈ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ, ਸੰਗਮ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਸਮਾਂ ਕੱਢਣਾ ਦੋਸਤੋ। ਅਤੇ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਨੂੰ, ਸ਼ੁੱਕਰਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਸਾਬਿਰ ਖਾਂ ਹੋਣਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਮ ਵਾਰਤਕ ਹੋਵਾਂਗਾ। ਪਿਛਲੀ ਬੈਠਕ 'ਚ ਬੜਾ ਮਜ਼ਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗਜ਼ਲ ਗਾਣ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹੀਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸ਼ੌਂਕ ਨਹੀਂ, ਬਹੁਤ ਮਤਲਬ ਸੀਰੀਅਸਲੀ ਉਹ ਗਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਗਜ਼ਲ, ਔਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਰੁਫ ਕਰਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ। ਇਸ ਵਾਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਾਜ ਹੈ ਫਰੋਖਾਬਾਦ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਵਡੇਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਚਰਚਾ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। So friends, tomorrow as I was showing the program that you can visit back, there's a poetry festival being hosted by the Creative Arts Academy in Kolkata, and several poets from Turkish to Persian to German to English to Sindhi, Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu, Malayalam, we're all getting together. I'll be one of them making my 2 pence contribution in Punjabi language. And I hope to see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. You can look at the link at the Creative Arts Academy or on my page as well. I think it shows on my page. My office is, sort of that, has put that poster on. You can look at the link and join tomorrow. On Friday, I'll be in conversation with Ustad Sabir Khan, the Khalifa, the head of the Farokhabad Gharana of Tabla. And I'll see you on Friday also at 5 p.m. As you would have noticed, today was 149th Baiṭhak. I've still not zeroed on to what I'm doing for the 150th. Most probably I'll do it on Sunday. So keep an eye, keep yourself free, because that'll be several hours long, believe you me. When I come on, I'm like that. I'm ruthless. I'm relentless. And I win. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 at the Creative Arts platform, and day after tomorrow at the YaarAnād platform. I will, of course, be starting my monologues on COVID-19 because things are happening. I had hoped that things would settle down and that I had educated people enough, but things are not good. Things are on the rise. I think I need to get my spanking paraphernalia up and running and do some dishum with you guys. I might start tonight, tomorrow, I don't know. There's plenty brewing within. Lots of information for several months that I have been away from my monologues on. I think I did 47, 48 monologues continuous on the COVID-19 situation. Europe is now looking at another blockade. Things are not good in America. More than 8 million people, more than 220,000 deaths. India is not looking good either, and people are callous. They've lowered their guards. So I think I need to start lecturing soon. I'll see you soon. यहाँ नहीं तो वहाँ कहीं ना कहीं मुलाकात होगी तो कुछ मुकालात भी होगी, कुछ सुनेंगे, कुछ सुनाएंगे. Satkartar, Khuda Hafiz, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Namaskar, Buonanotte Italia, and a very good night India.